Welcome to the Bleeding Edge Report with Chris and Treg, where tech meets its match.
Well, hello. Welcome back to the latest episode of the Bleeding Edge Report with Chris and Treg. I'm Chris. There's my partner, Treg. And this week, it's Treg's turn to bring something to us that you didn't know about. So, Treg, I'm going to raise the bar on you. I'm looking for something really exciting, something that's going to make me laugh, make me cry, but I want to learn something. What do you have?
Oh, well, I know it made me cry. Put it that way.
Okay.
This is this is a true story, but it's a lesson that I want to go through, using a real true story as an example. So
All
I
right.
call this episode 8, as how not to make what I would call the biggest tech mistake of the century. And this is
I'm
directed out.
intrigued.
Yeah, well, this is directed out to all the product managers, marketing managers, CMOs, everyone else. About because you and I, we've seen a lot of mistakes, right? Seen a lot of great things. We've seen a lot of mistakes, and the least we can do is pass down our knowledge a little bit to some of the others, right? Some of the younger technology experts. So
In the hopes that they don't have to make similar mistakes in the future. So
yes,
I'm intrigued. What
okay,
story do you have?
okay. This is a story with HP. Okay, and this is how, in my opinion, HP missed out on creating and being the dominant uh, manufacturer of smartphones in the world.
Okay. I don't know this story.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting story. I guess it all started, when I started my career was in 1991, working with tech companies, and then we got hooked up with HP, and then we started working with division through divisions, basically providing market consulting services, market research services, and stuff like that.
Sure.
So, so anyway, we eventually ended up with through the calculator division, and then we ended up with a division in Singapore called the Jornada division, or the PDA division, which stands for Personal Digital Assistant. Okay,
Yes.
yeah, you remember those.
I
So that was
remember.
about. We started working with the PDA division. I think it was '94, early '95, and they were working on some real exciting stuff back then, right? Some really cool stuff, breakthrough stuff. And if you remember back then, HP was the powerhouse, right? They were the Apple.
Yeah.
They were the Apple of the '90s.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a fair statement. Yeah, they were more powerful than of a brand than anybody else in terms of electronics. No doubt about it.
Yeah. And they couldn't do much wrong. And they had more money than anybody. Okay. So anyway, bottom line is we're working with this team. And one of the projects that we work on is, okay, let's take a look at combining a phone with a PDA. Okay. And so the division, they came up with a whole bunch of prototypes, actually working prototypes that uses GPS technology. So they came up with a lot of working devices. And one of the working devices was based upon this model right here. Okay, so this is the model. It's called an IPAC. Right when HP bought IPAC, they basically came out with their kind of cross-brand version here.
Oh, so when they acquired Compact Computer, they were producing this unit and they called it the IPAC.
Yeah, well, this one was called the IPAC. Before that, they had what was called the Jornada series, which is this. Okay. So they started out with this one, and this was pretty popular back then, Jornada. But then they kind of worked into a different kind of form factor. They got rid of the lid, they made it a lot lighter. This was kind of plastic case. This is actually aluminum case. You can
Yeah.
throw this thing 100 yards in a parking lot and it still works. But anyway, so they came out with this, and this, okay, next thing you know, uh, so we were brought on to basically understand the market potential of this right
Troy,
here.
that looks like pretty much like today's mobile phone, don't you think?
It is. It's extremely close to today's. Touchscreen, had a touchscreen, had a couple kind of, you call them hot buttons or whatever here.
Yeah.
Even had a headphone jack, had a SD card for music. Okay, and so it had all the components. They didn't have cameras back then, but it had pretty much everything else. Had email, okay, had texting, um, had internet, had contact lists, pretty much every other the basic components of a smartphone had all
1996, you said.
1996.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, they would have I mean, that's what we're using today, essentially, right? I mean,
Yeah.
obviously today's stuff is much better, but wow, I've never heard this story. This is impressive.
So 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 anyway, we put together a methodology and a study, and this was in the United States because the U.S. was the biggest market back then. If it didn't go in the U.S., it wouldn't go anywhere in the world. So the first step was to do the U.S. and see basically what would be the market acceptance of something like this,
Right.
given the price point that they were thinking about coming up with and the capabilities that this had. And so anyway, after a few months and we get done doing our kind of consulting piece and study, we come back to the teams, the engineering teams, the product management teams, the product line teams, and we explain to them where we think this is going to be at in terms of market acceptance. Well, it did great. It did phenomenal. Okay, especially among the business users back then who were familiar with PDAs. Consumers, if you remember, phones were really going down in size back then.
Right.
So this would have been a leap for a certain proportion of the consumer segment, but a lot of the consumer segment still saw the value in this. But at any rate, so we take it back. We're doing, and this is one of those ones where you know what's going on in the presentation. You've been in it before, been in these before, and where everything gets said and done. And then what happened in our presentation was one guy, and I'm not going to name his name, but one guy stands up. He was a product line manager, and he picks up the test device and he's filling it, and he's putting it in his pocket, in his coat pocket, and holding it and shaking it and doing all this stuff. And he goes, you know what? I think this is too big and it's too bulky for folks, and I don't think people are going to buy this.
As opposed to having two devices, a phone and a PDA, because that's what everybody was carrying back then. So
Right.
where's the logic in that, quite
And
frankly?
take a look. Take a look. Here's my iPhone, and this is just the iPhone Pro. It's not the big one, right? So
Right.
this is the iPhone, and then there's that. So yeah, the market was, a good portion of the market was not used to something of this size. Well, again, the good portion of the market wasn't used to something the size of a BlackBerry when it came out.
Yeah,
When the
right.
first BlackBerry came out that had a phone on it, which was 2001, 2002, no one was ready for that. But look what happened. So anyway, imagine this is what I consider to be probably the biggest mistake I've ever seen, and by one person. And it's a lesson to be learned, and that is keep in mind that even though someone's in charge, they're only bringing with them their past experiences, okay, and the way they look at things and they judge things, and be very careful in bringing your personal preferences into the decision. And you and I have both seen time and time again where great ideas get killed because of someone's personal preference that's making the decision. And so that's one thing to keep in mind with
Yeah,
technology.
you should never trust your personal uh, taste. It's what the market says.
Yes.
Yeah, I've learned that a lot. And it's tough because I think I know stuff. I think I know what people like, but it turns out I like stuff that's very different. And that's okay, right? And yeah, so you're right. That is a critical lesson. The other lesson is going back a little bit further on the strategic side of this. When you decide that you're going to develop a product like this, you need buy-in from the critical people who are responsible ultimately. And it needs to be authentic, and they need to trust one another. You can't have somebody, pull the plug on this at the last second, because look at all the technology and the people and the hours and the market that's been wasted. Right? They threw the baby out with the bathwater, basically, is what you're telling me.
Well, they threw out probably would be the biggest market opportunity they ever had.
$100 billion, easy.
Easy. I mean, just imagine. So again, and you got to remember, HP was the Apple back then. They had the horsepower.
Yeah.
So they could have done a lot worldwide. They could have launched these things worldwide, and at least started the market. I mean, they might have eventually screwed it up, or Apple might have taken it over, or maybe even Apple would never enter the market because the market would have already been filled with
Correct.
competitors, including someone that's very entrenched like HP.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right. We could all be carrying HP phones today, but this is why you're not. And I agree. So to the viewers, will you please do us a favor and learn from previous mistakes such as this, so it doesn't happen to you on your watch. So that,
Yeah.
Trey, I want to thank you for bringing this story up, because it is one that I didn't know about personally, and I can completely understand what's happened here.
Well, I don't think
And
I think if you take a poll of 1,000 people that currently work at HP and ask them if they ever knew something like this happened, 1 out of 1,000 or less
yeah,
than that would even know something like this happened.
that's right. That's right. So
But
great.
anyway,
Well, thank you again for bringing that up. And to those of you who enjoyed this video, this episode, please like and subscribe. We're growing our base rapidly, and we appreciate you joining up to support us. Next week, it's my turn, so I'm looking forward to that opportunity as well to try to top this one. But this is really good stuff. Thanks again, Treg, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
okay. Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye-bye.